Welcome to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten. Hi, I'm Wendy. After I graduated with my master's in wellness management, I started my own company, T2 Coaching, Health, Fitness, and Sport.
And I'm Kirsten, an athlete, vegan, life coach, and girl mom, running a business focused on helping others create a life they love.
We are here to explore all things wellness to help you become the person you've always wanted to be.
So if that's why you're here, open your ears and your mind as we tackle the world of wellness together.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Kirsten. How are you?
I am doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
You are?
I'm kind of like just checking off things and kind of like I have a lot going on, but I'm kind of calm about it.
Oh, good. To me, that would be a massive wellness win.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, I was going to cut my run short. I did cut my run short because I ended up going with my friend Ann, and she joined me, but she didn't want to run. She wanted to walk. So that added to not being able to get the miles I wanted to get in. And at the same time, I got in the elevation I wanted to get in. So I'm like, I'm good. I feel good. And I feel like I did more than I probably anticipated. So it was really, yeah.
Well, and you always say every time you meet up with Ann, you end up having a good chat anyway. And, you know, sometimes it's about that.
Yeah, that was worth it. It was much needed chat.
Oh, that's awesome. So what was your wellness win for the week?
Well, I volunteered at a race called the Georgia Death Race. And I had, I volunteer for the last 3 years, and I like to do the last aid station, which most people don't like to do because it's 3:30 p.m. till 2:30 a.m. But my friends are there, and it's the last aid station, and it's just, pretty chill. I mean, I really don't need to be there till like 9 p.m. But I get volunteer credits. And this year, at kind of with a week to go, they still needed what's called flaggers or sweepers. And that's where you sweep the course and grab the flags and grab up trash and help anyone that needs it. And so I decided to be the sweeper. So I got to sweep the first 21 miles.
Oh, that's awesome. So you got some mileage in.
I got some mileage in, and it took like 7.5 hours. So it was really slow, but it was fine because I got to like remind myself like about the course. And it was all of like logistics, like, okay, let me just tell you about it. So I stayed with my friend Ryan, who was doing the race, and he lived 20 minutes away. So I drove him to the race start. And then, he got there at 4:30. The race started at 5. So it was all like logistics. Like I knew I was going to get done at around 12:30, and I was with someone else, and his wife, we waited like 10 minutes, and his wife was there to pick us up. And then she drove us back to my car because they were camping where the start of the race was. So she drove me back to my car, which was like a 30, 45-minute drive. And then I'm like, okay, it's now 1:30, 2 o'clock. I have to be at my post at 3:30, and it's an hour and 15-minute drive. So I had time. Like I wasn't rushed.
Right.
It was all about like the timing. I love when timing works out. So I got to like calmly drive there. I got to look for coffee. I had time to get some coffee. And I had time to make sure I knew the directions to the aid station, which was 7 miles from the finish. So that's one reason I like this aid station, because it's so close to the finish. So I got there with plenty of time, and I brought my book. Probably one of the highlights is I brought my book.
You still got your reading in.
I was trying to do my 53 pages a day for my birth month, and I got that done because it wasn't crazy busy. And so I think logistically, like planning it all out. And for me, I like coffee. So, strategically drinking coffee throughout the night and kind of walking around and kind of keeping alert. And then doing it and just helping the runners is awesome. And again, one of the best parts is I didn't know that all the sweepers get a free entry into the race next year.
No way.
So when I submitted all my hours, I think it was 11 plus that, so it was 18 hours. The person said, oh, by the way, and if you were a sweeper, you get a free entry for next year. And I'm like,
now you have all those hours plus your free entry.
Right. So now I'm kind of like, okay, let's sign up. I've been contemplating it. I've done this before. I've been contemplating it. I did it in 2022. And again, I was a mental wreck because my father passed away, and I was grieving the whole race. And I said never again, knowing the reason I was mentally distraught was I was grieving, and I didn't know it at the time. So now I'm kind of like, okay, 5 years later, 2027, I think I want to tackle it again. And so I'm going to sign up, and then knowing like, you know what, if you change your mind, don't do it. Volunteer again. If you change your mind, I'll just go back and volunteer again.
Right,
so
because it was a free
win-win. It was a free entry, and maybe she'll let me like give it to someone else. Either way, it's a win-win. I'm just really drawn to this race. I love the course, the whole like state park, Vogel State Park to Amicalola State Park, everything about it. And it's just kind of like really mysterious. It's called the Georgia Death Race, you know, like
that. That's enough of a reason to like it, is it's called the Georgia Death Race.
Yeah. So I'm just glad I got to experience it again as a volunteer. And I encourage everyone, you know, give back, you know, volunteer when you can, because I just think, you know, we've been in the sport for so long. You know, I started volunteering at local 70.3s and the local sprints. And it's just really, for me, I don't need to race. I just like to be part of the scene and part of it. And I just had a great weekend.
That's awesome. That is awesome. My wellness swim is similar in the fact that, and we're going to talk about this on our podcast today, because I had a couple people after this experience, they're like, oh, you should talk about that on your podcast. So my race I did last weekend, I ended up with a DNF, which for those of you who don't know, it means I did not finish the race. And what is my wellness win is the entire time, I didn't know I was going to not finish, obviously, when I started, even halfway through, even right up to the point where I didn't finish. I didn't know there was this intermediate cutoff. I didn't know the cutoff times. I'll be honest, I never looked at them because I've never been in a position where I've been close to a cutoff time. Mm-hmm. So I just, like, somebody at Masters this morning was like, oh, when you, so I had a mechanical, it took the race support about 2.5 hours to get to me. So by the time I got back on my bike and rode to the next aid station, I didn't make the cutoff for that aid station. And this guy this morning at Masters, he's like, oh, when you got your bike back, did you look at your time and were you like, oh gosh, I have to make this cutoff? And I was like, embarrassingly enough, I had no idea there was a cutoff at this aid station because I didn't look, because that isn't something I normally have had to worry about. So the wellness win of it is that I'm 100% fine with my DNF. And I ended up walking about 7 miles with another girl. And this was her very first triathlon. She was younger. She was in her early 20s. She had been training a year, never done anything like this before, training her butt off for a year. And she was devastated. And so I felt like it was kind of as her older, more wiser sister, to chit chat with her about it and how, just some kind of lessons I've learned along the way. One of them is, and Wendy and I talk about this a lot, don't let your race define you. So if you're not loving your training and the lifestyle and the community that you're in triathlon or ultra running or anything, the outcome, the race result is not going to make you happy. And if you end up not finishing, if all you were doing was training to finish a race and you don't finish, it's devastating. But if you were training because you love the training and the race is just your fun prize for putting so much time and effort into training, then it's no big deal. And it's different in our position because we've done a lot of races and we've finished a lot. And this was her very first triathlon. And so all she wanted to do was finish, and she wasn't able to do that.
Why was she walking with you? She got a flat tire?
She had a mechanical as well. Her quick release, it's different than mine. Mine is like a manual thing that you twist and then flip the little thing. Hers, like you screw something in. And it was loose, and she didn't know that all she needed was an Allen wrench to tighten it. Mm-hmm. And so her back tire, like everything was loose, and she was just afraid to ride because she didn't want to crash or get her. So she had a flat tire. She fixed it, but that thing was so loose, she was afraid to ride until she got it checked out. And we thought somebody would be along, because every race I've ever done, there's mechanics driving around. They stop and help. This race had, it had one guy and he was trying to get to everyone. And it was the Oceanside 70.3. It was the roughest road I've ever ridden on. And there was water bottles, like every couple miles, just 5-6 water bottles that flew out of people's cages because the road was so rough. And a lot of people I knew got flats. And when we got stopped for not making the cutoff to that 46-mile aid station, there was about 40 people that didn't make the cutoff, and half of them were mechanicals because they didn't get any support. So it wasn't like just her and I. It was lots. We were just the idiots who decided we wanted to just keep walking, making up some ground, but we were chit-chatting the whole time. It was great. It was
okay. So what if you didn't walk?
And we just stayed there? We would have still waited 2.5 hours.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, because the guy was coming up behind us. So a girl that I did, there was when I first decided, when the first person I met up with, she was waiting for a mechanic. Her bike needed more than she or I knew what to do. I waited with her for about 15 minutes. And then I didn't want to just sit there. I was just like antsy and I wanted to like move. So I'm like, I'm going to just keep walking. And I was hoping, I didn't know when the next aid station was, but I was like, maybe somebody at the aid station could have helped me. So I kept walking. And when a mechanic finally caught up to me and the girl, her name was Emma, that I was walking with, that initial girl was in the car with him.
And then he helped you guys to get back on your bikes.
Both of our issues. It was about, I flatted at mile 25, walked till about 32. And then we rode from 32 to 46, not even knowing about the time cutoff. We weren't riding slow, but we weren't like, oh gosh, we have to sprint to make this cutoff. We were just riding in. And then when we got to that aid station, there was a big pile of people and we're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And we get up there and they're like, oh, you didn't make the time of 12:20. You had to be there at like 12:25 and it was like 12:30. So I was like, what can you do? But it was interesting because this was my first DNF in any race in 28 years of racing. So I PR'd. I got my first DNF. But what was interesting is since I've never DNF'd, I haven't been around the group of people, the DNF group. And it was all, emotions were all over the place. Like I said, a ton of people, it was mechanicals. Some were more angry and some were sad. There was a lady like sobbing on the ground because she had put so much into this, so there was all these emotions. And there were a couple people that were like, like mad about the course support. Like, there was nobody there. They never got to us. So it got me thinking, which is why Wendy and I wanted to do this podcast, about the emotions surrounding a DNF, B, how you can prepare yourself to not DNF for something that is in our control. So some of those things might be nutrition. I know a lot of people who have, they got really sick because of their nutrition plan, or they swallowed a lot of salt water. And not learning to swim in salt water with their mouth closed. Or for me, mine was a mechanical, and I still don't know what it is because I haven't taken my bike in. But I didn't get my bike tuned up before this race because I'm on this big, I'm going to do whatever I can to save money. So I don't know what the issue is yet. I'll know after my mechanic looks at it. But it could have been something that could have been prevented had I taken my bike in the week before the race or 2 weeks before the race, just to make sure everything was perfect. And the girl, Emma, that I was walking with, she could have avoided it if she would have known more about, and I didn't know either, more about bike mechanics, that all she needed was an Allen wrench to tighten up that thing. So a lot of times, and she's like, why isn't anybody coming? And I'm like, I don't know. And I don't know the rules not rules, but I don't know the guidelines that specific races have for, do we offer neutral support? Is that something that's just a bonus? Is that something that you're paying for with your entry and we're going to get to everybody? So I don't know how they laid it out in the first place, which is why I wasn't angry, because I always feel like in triathlon, everything is your responsibility
Absolutely.
to be able to, like, even nutrition, like they have nutrition on the course. It's still your responsibility to make sure you have nutrition. Because I know races that have run out of water or run out of electrolyte. And yeah, that totally sucks. But is that the responsibility of the race? Did they say, we will guarantee that at every aid station, there's bananas? Or is it your responsibility as an athlete in an individual sport to make sure that you have that covered regardless of what the race offers?
Right. It's your responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why, you know, like taking some responsibility in, because I did have people message me and they're like, oh my gosh, that sucks. I can't believe, you know, you must be devastated, or I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'm like, like I said, I did not get my bike tuned up before the race. I got it tuned up in August before my September race. And then I didn't race. I rode my bike 5 times this spring, which is more than I've ever ridden before this early of a race ever. And everything felt like it worked fine. But I have tubeless tires. So my bike sitting there all winter could have had something to do with it. One of the things my mechanic suggested that might have happened, and again, he hasn't looked at my bike, is that the stuff that you put in your tires when you run tubeless, the slimy stuff, it could have gotten gunked up in the stem, the nozzle thing. And that's why I couldn't get air in there with my cartridge. Mm-hmm. So that might have been it. And that's something that could have been avoided had I had a tune-up before this race.
Right.
So, Wendy, tell us about, because you've had a couple DNFs, correct?
I had one.
Okay.
Why did you think a couple?
I was thinking there was an ultra also that you didn't finish.
No, okay. But I'll talk about that. So, one DNF. So when I started, my second year of triathlon, I was training in Michigan, and I was on this like little triathlon team, and I was borrowing my friend's disc wheel. I think it was an Olympic distance, and I got a flat with 10 miles to go on a disc wheel, and I rode it. I don't know how to change a disc wheel flat. I probably didn't know how to change a flat. It's my second year. I rode 10 miles on a flat, and I finished. So this is 1996. This is 1995. No, this is maybe my first year. When did I start? 92, 93. In 1996, I qualified for age group nationals, which was in Orange County, California. And I'd gotten hurt, a hip flexor groin strain. And I went to this race not knowing if I could run. And I swam, and running to my bike hurt was excruciating. I got on the bike. I could feel it on the bike. And I think I was a little under rested. I don't know if I was overtrained, but this is 1996. And I got off the bike. I ran out of transition, and I said, nope. And I was just crying and crying. My parents were there. I think I was more like sad that they came all the way out to watch me and I didn't finish. Knowing now what I wish I would have finished, I could have walked, but I didn't have that mentality of if you can walk, you can finish. And so I DNF'd, and then we went in the car and we drove the coast, and it was beautiful, and it was a nice little vacation. But I was crying because I didn't finish. There was no like failure. There was no like thoughts of I failed or I'm worthless. There was no emotion at all like that. I was just sad that I was injured and I couldn't finish, and I put all this time and money and energy getting to Orange County, California. But it was never about anything other than I'm sad. It wasn't I'm sad, I'm hurt, and I probably shouldn't have even gone, as an injured athlete. And it's a learning opportunity. And then over the years since I've been in ultras, when I did the Georgia Death Race in 2022, I was grieving, and I didn't want to start. Like I didn't even want to start that race. And that's unusual because usually mental strength is what gets me through things. And obviously my mental strength was better than I anticipated because I finished that race But every chance I got, I called on, pick me up at the next aid station, pick me up, pick me up, pick me up. I mean, at least a dozen or 2 dozen times. I kept calling him, crying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be here. But I was just having a really hard time out there because, you know, a lot of ultras, you're by yourself in your thoughts, in your mind. Yeah. And so I got to see him at mile 50. I was in 5th place. That was a motivator. And if you were top 10, you couldn't use a pacer. And I called my pacer at mile 42 and I said, don't come up. I'm top 10. I don't want a pacer. But as soon as I left for the last 25 miles, I'm like, oh my God, what a mistake. I wish someone was with me. And I wish I would have just had someone with me. It would have been a different experience. Those last 25 miles, my headlamp was really dim. I was really it's still inexperienced. My headlight was dim. I tripped and fell a dozen times. I was just like, what am I doing here? And at that point, there's no way out. Like there's no crew access or anything. These ultras are interesting because there are like, what if you had an emergency and you're alone?
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. So anyways, I did finish. So I did finish that one. But the one you're thinking about is my first 100-mile experience.
Is that the Run Rabbit Run?
Run Rabbit Run, I didn't finish.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, there were 2 categories. There was a tortoise and a hare, and my friend, who's the race director, convinced me to do the hare. The tortoises started at like 6 in the morning. The hare started at noon, so we had less time. Right. And I should have been pulled at like mile 40 or 50 because the course was long. I went off course, but they let me go. And then at mile 75, the aid station was all packed up. And I'm like, wait, where's everyone? And my crew was there. And I said to my crew, John, I'm like, can you come with me? Even though I'm not supposed to have a crew because I'm a hare. I go, I don't care. And so he ended up going back with me 5 miles, called the race director. And the race director said, Wendy didn't make the cut, pull her off. And so I was bummed, but at the same time, really glad I was done. Yeah. And so I DNF'd 2 races, one Olympic distance triathlon, 100 miler, but that charged me to want to do it again. Came back the next year and finished. And then I'm like, I missed triathlon. I want to go back to Ironman. And they brought in Ironman Boulder in 2014. So, I mean, like at no point though, did I ever feel like a failure. It's never even crossed my mind. My friend Trent, who did Georgia Death Race this past weekend, I saw his post on social media and he commented a couple times that he failed. And I'm like, you know, failure means different things to different people. Yeah. And that made me think that some people feel like a failure. You know, again, failure is not a person, it's an event in my mind. But I've never, ever felt that way, which is an interesting thing. I don't think in my whole life, I really remember ever feeling like a failure in the negative sense of the word. Right. It could be very negative. It could be very positive. If it wasn't for my failures, I wouldn't have had my successes, which I think is really true. So yeah, just the emotion of everything. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and so one thing I was thinking when you talk about failure, when there's people who choose to not finish a race. There's people who don't finish because they're hurt or something hurts or they're sick or they get pulled. I know people who get pulled for medical, like medical won't let them go on because they're dizzy and nauseous and they're like, this isn't safe. For mechanicals, for all the reasons. So what I was thinking is we and Wendy and I talk about this a lot too, is defining for yourself what failure is, what success is, what anything is. And so even if somebody chose to DNF for whatever reason, that's a personal choice. And then they get to decide how they feel about it. You also get to decide how you feel about it if it was a forced pull off, because I remember Nikki Leo, it was her 12th or it was her 11th. It was supposed to be her 12th Ironman to get a legacy spot. And they pulled her off the course because she was sick. And she was devastated because it was supposed to be her last one before getting to go to Kona. So then she had to do a whole nother Ironman, and she ended up qualifying without it in an age group, like getting a qualifying spot
at Louisville. I was there
in that last one. And so if I when you look at things like that, you're like, she would have qualified in her 12th legacy one, and she didn't, and she was devastated. But how cool is that the next one she, quote, actually qualified instead of taking the legacy spot? So, you never know, like, what comes of it. Like Wendy said, her DNF made her want to go back the next year and crush it. Think of how much you learned. This girl, Emma, that I was walking with that was devastated, she's like, now I have to do it next year. Next year, I guarantee she's going to know her bike inside and out.
Right.
And then the other,
Well, I wanted to just jump in when, there were a couple other races I could have DNF'd. One of them was I broke my chain at Ironman Coeur d'Alene. And it only took the mechanic relative to you 25 minutes to reach me. But I was between 8 stations and a broken chain. There was nothing I could do. And just for all you out there, you can't accept outside help from anyone, because they'll get disqualified if you do. So, I just sat on the road and waited. And one of the black and white striped guy came and said, "Are you okay?" I held up my chain, and he called a mechanic. So I knew a mechanic was on his way. So that was almost a DNF race. And then Ironman Boulder 2015, I couldn't breathe. I got to mile 100 on the bike. I couldn't breathe. I was struggling with the breathing, and that's never happened to me before. And I thought about DNFing because I couldn't breathe. And so I pretty much coasted the last 12 miles, started the run, and then at mile 9 of the run, I couldn't breathe again, checked myself into medical. And if medical said don't go on, I would have DNF'd. But medical said, you're okay. What do you want to do? They kind of encouraged me to stop. And at that point, I learned my lesson from 1996. I'm like, well, if I can walk, I want to finish. And so I ended up walking, and I ended up finishing. So again, lots of lessons learned along the way from that 1996 DNF, and then the mechanicals that almost caused DNF, and then having that choice. For example, in these ultra runs, if you make the cutoff at an 8 station and you choose to stop, it's ultimately your choice. And everyone's like, you made the cutoff. Why would you stop? And I don't do that. I don't do that to people anymore. Because there were some people that made it to my 8 station in time. And I'm like, are you sure? What's going on to make you want to DNF? And these are the consequences, but ultimately it's up to you. But I just want you to know the experiences I've had with making that choice to DNF. And the 2 people that did, it's because they felt injured. And so again, I'm so experienced now. I would DNF if I was sick or injured.
Yeah, I remember. Well, I 2 years ago I crashed at the Wildlife Loop, and right. I couldn't lift my arm. My ribs were bruised. I was all road rashed. But I got my bike in, and when I ran in transition, I was all like blood, and my kit was ripped a little. And this lady was like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think so." And she's like, "Are you going to try to run?" I was like, "I don't know. I haven't decided." She goes, "Do you want some ibuprofen?" I was like, "Sure." And I don't know how many she gave me. It was probably way too many. And I took the ibuprofen with caffeine. And I was like, I'm just going to go until I can't.
Uh-huh.
And I just started running. And I think the adrenaline, the caffeine, the ibuprofen, I was able to finish that. But then like an hour later, I couldn't even take a breath. But I was able to finish. And I remember, I think it was Scott Jurek. I don't want to quote it because I could be totally off. But I remember in somebody's book, he said, if he feels pain that he knows will result in a permanent or long-term injury, he will stop.
Absolutely.
But if he has pain that he knows is temporary, like a blister is one of the most painful injuries or little like things.
Inconveniences.
Thank you. And that blisters are painful and horrific and so much pain, but they're not permanent. They're not going to permanently, you're going to eventually grow skin back there. So he will run through those kind of pains that are like chafing. To me, chafing is like it's so painful, but it's not going to permanently injure me. So I'm going to endure the pain and suck it up and be chafed. And then a gentle reminder that next time I need to put some lubricant in the areas that are chafing.
Right. And something that you made me think about, and like I'm still sure this is a rule in an Ironman or 70.3 at the branded Ironman events. They're supposed to ask you 3 times, are you sure you want to quit? They're supposed to ask you 3 times before they accept the fact that you want to quit.
I think, and that's good, because at first you're like, of course I want to quit. This is awful. But then if you think about it, you might be like, well, maybe I'll give it a try. Or like I said, just go till you can't. If you feel like, obviously if you have a mechanical that you can't, like Wendy's chain, or an injury that is going to make it worse. But if you're just like throwing up, so that a good example is you're throwing up, you can't hold down any nutrition. That's awful. You have no energy. It could be potentially dangerous. But if you try doing something like running, you're not going to be able to keep up with a high energy output exercise like running. But taking a few steps, walking to the next aid station, and then deciding if medical clears you to do that, then do that and try that. And then you have a whole nother mile to decide, do I want to quit or do I want to keep going?
Right.
I used to also, I think when I was younger, or I don't know if it was just different life experiences, I used to get annoyed if people quit if they didn't have to. And so I don't know what it stemmed from. I remember somebody saying, like, a professional triathlete, if they're out of the top 10 and they don't finish, and somebody was like, oh, that's so disrespectful to all of us age groupers that are doing whatever we can to finish. But I have a different thought on that now. I feel like it's your own personal choice at any time if you want to finish, and you have your own reasons, and you get to judge yourself or decide for yourself if that's a quote good or a quote bad reason. And if you're accepting of whatever those outcomes or consequences are, then that's perfect. That's your choice.
You just reminded me, in 2009, Ironman Kona, I swallowed a lot of salt water, and that caused some GI distress. Again, unaware in the moment, but in hindsight. And I ended up stopping at mile 42 of the bike. I've never had to stop with Porta-John before. And I emptied everything. And I was behind in my nutrition, again, not realizing it at the time. Got off the bike, was at every Porta-John, every mile of the run. And I was walking. And I'm like, okay, it's like a 5 mile out, 5 mile back into town, an easy place to drop out. And the thought on my mind was, well, I'm not a pro, so I'm not going to quit. I can still walk.
Right.
And just that whole comment about pros, they save it for another day because their reason for racing is different than an amateur's.
Right. Right.
And they're like, why am I going to suffer? Trash my body when I'm not going to place. I'm not going to make any money. I don't need to finish. I've already been there, done that. Let's save it for another day.
Yeah. And that's another reason that I wasn't upset about my DNF is I've done that exact course. I think this was my 9th time doing the Oceanside course. So it's like, I've done the course. I've finished so many races. I've been proud of myself, had great accomplishments. So I didn't need that. And it was out of your control. I mean, not finishing was a little bit out of your control. Again, couldn't you have controlled that mechanical? Who knows? In the moment, you couldn't. Right.
You got to make control.
And Wendy, it's interesting you said that, because when I first was walking and I knew I couldn't fit, I tried riding on it, and it was too flat to ride on. I couldn't get any more air in there. So I started walking. I was thinking a lot. I actually did meet up with Emma. I was like 3 miles in. I walked by myself for 3 miles. Then I met up with Emma. We walked the other 4. I was thinking, if somebody comes right now and I can fix this, I was trying to think about options in my plan. And in my mind, after an hour, I was thinking, oh, this would be kind of a fun challenge, being an hour behind. Let's say that put me at 50th place, and like seeing over the next couple hours if I could just move up places, like go as hard as I can and make it a game. Like, how many people can I pass? So I was excited about that. But then another hour went by. And then I was like, by the time I get to transition, it's going to be about 2:00. I was planning on being done around like 12:30, 12:15, 12:30. So then I was like, do I really want to run at 2:00 and take the whole afternoon to do this race when my child and, you know, they were there in Oceanside waiting for me. Right. And my plan was to race in the morning so I could hang out with my family in the afternoon. So as the time went by, I was struggling with, should I just ride in a transition and call it a day? And then as soon as my bike got fixed, so my plan was just to ride into transition. I was going to give Emma all my nutrition because she's like, I'm out of nutrition. I go, you know what? Let's get to the transition. I will give you all my run nutrition and you go have an awesome run. So that was my plan. When we got our bike fixed and we started riding again, I actually got excited to finish again. I'm like, my Cora and Kat, they're going to be hanging out on the beach. They don't care if I run an extra, if it's a couple hours. Like they're going to be just doing their thing on the beach. And so then when we started riding again, it was about 13, 14 miles to that aid station. I got excited to race again. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to see how many people I can pass on the run because I'm feeling good. And then it was decided for me.
Right.
So I did go back and forth with what are and I thought the same thing as you were asking the people at that final aid station. Like if I got to transition and decided not to run, how would I feel after? And I was actually okay with being like, you know what? I came out to race in the morning to spend the afternoon with my family. That's what I did. I did the best I could for the situation. And now I'm going to move on from it. But then as soon as I got back on my bike, I was like, now I want to finish. So I did go up and down a lot. And I'm kind of glad it was more decided for me. Like when we got to the top, when they're like, oh, you can't finish. And I was like, seriously? And then I was like, well, then I didn't have to make that decision. So that's another thing. But if I would have decided not to, because at first when I told Emma my plan, she goes, no, because if I can't, because she didn't know if they would be able to fix her bike because she didn't know what was wrong with it. So she goes, no, if I can't get my bike fixed, you have to finish it for me because I want to finish it. And then I was like, well, I could do that or I could just not. Like it wasn't a big deal to me because I didn't do this race to finish it. I did this race because I was going to be in California anyway. It would be my first race of the season. I was just excited to go out and race and put all my training into practice. So either way, I think I would have been happy. And I think that's going into a race, you guys, I feel like that's the healthiest place to be because you've just heard of like 4 different scenarios between me and Wendy of times that either we did DNF or we could have DNF'd based on mechanicals, injuries, physical, nutrition. And so you never know what is going to happen on race day. All you can control is your attitude and your feelings about your specific race and performance.
When as a coach, I like to prepare my athletes for the what ifs. What if you get a flat? Do you know how to change it? What if you break a chain? You're not going to carry a chain with you, but it could happen. What if you lose or forget your water bottle or your gel or whatever your nutrition is? What if you miss an aid station because you just can't grab the bottle and you try a few times and you just can't get a hold of that bottle? Are you going to stop and go back and get it, or are you going to keep moving on? What if you get hit or kicked or something in the swim? What if you're cramping? So I try to go through all these scenarios of things that can happen and just to prepare, especially beginners who they've never experienced, to know that can happen.
Yeah, I like that. That to go through every what if. And Emma, the girl I was walking with, her dad he's an experienced triathlete, and he did like teach her how to change a tire. Like he did go through some of the what ifs, and she goes, I thought he prepared me for everything. And the one thing that he didn't prepare me for is the one thing that happened.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of Murphy's Law too, right? The one thing that you don't know how to do. I had something, this made me laugh so hard. So when we were packing up the next day to drive home from California, I was taking everything out of the car so we could pack stuff in. And I pulled out my pump and I handed it to Cora and I go, hey, Cora, will you go put this over there? And she goes, this would have been handy to have yesterday at the race. I was laughing. I go, yeah, it would have, but I can't really carry my pump my whole bike ride. But it was just funny that she like realized that that's why I didn't finish was my flat tire. She's like, this would have been handy. I was like, thanks, 7-year-old. It made me laugh. Any closing words for people who have DNF'd and do feel like a failure or do feel like they didn't accomplish what they set out to do and it is weighing negatively on them?
I think it's part of the deal as an athlete. I think illnesses and injuries are part of the deal. If you're going to be an athlete in any sport, that is very common to get injured at some point. I think DNFs are common. It's part of the deal. It's a risk you're taking when you enter a race. Again, most DNFs probably are more mechanical, injury, illness related. They're not like, probably it's rare, except in an ultra. It's rare when the athlete's like, I just don't want to finish.
Well, it also, just so that you guys listening know, they're like at that aid station we got pulled from, probably 25 to 30 of the athletes, they didn't make the time because they didn't have the train, like they weren't
right.
fast.
They didn't have the speed. They weren't fast enough. Yeah. And again, that's part of the deal. And if you are one of those athletes battling a cutoff, then just knowing that you might not make the cutoff is going to prepare you mentally that you might not finish. Right. And again, a lot of athletes don't make those swim cutoffs. And I think the biggest thing in our sport is athletes signing up for 140.6 or 70.3 before they know how to swim.
Yep. I have two people in my masters right now.
I think that's very tragic.
Right.
Again, I'm a swimmer, so I don't know what they're feeling. Like I want to do an Ironman, but I don't know how to swim.
Wendy, I will tell you.
To me, I just think that's really risky. And that leads to a lot of frustration for you personally, as well as maybe a coach like myself. I've coached plenty of athletes who don't know how to swim. Some of them don't start their Ironman because they still don't know how to swim. And then they postpone their Ironman till like the next year or months down the road. I just encourage athletes to really read the athlete guidebook.
Yes.
Really prepare as best as you can. You're capable of preparing. This day and age, there's just so many resources to help guide you and educate you to have the tools, the clothing, the gear that you need to be successful, as well as the training to be successful. And if you're an athlete out there that is battling a time cutoff, it's okay to wait. There's no rush. Triathlon's not going anywhere. If you don't have to do the race next month because of a setback or something's going on that you don't feel like as prepared, because you know, without a doubt, you're not going to make the swim cutoff or the bike cutoff, give yourself more time. It's more enjoyable.
Yeah. The swim thing I have two people in my masters right now who are doing Boulder 70.3, which is coming up here pretty soon in a couple months, in 2 months. And one of them, and neither one can swim. Like they just learned to swim at the beginning of the year. And one of them said, because exactly what you just said, like they sign up and they don't know how to swim. He said, I didn't know how to swim until I tried swimming. Like he signed up thinking he knew how to swim, because when you're a kid and you're splashing around the water. So he signed up for the 70.3 thinking he knew how to swim. He would just have to get in the water and practice. And he got in the water and he couldn't even make a 25. And he's like, I had no idea I couldn't swim. So that's a thing. But you guys, swimmers especially, if you know you're going to be close to that cutoff, you need to swim more than 3 times a week. 3 times a week is great amount of swimming if you are a decent swimmer. But if you're battling that cutoff, don't swim once a week. Don't swim twice a week. I would swim 4 or 5 days a week. And even if that cuts into your bike and run time, because if you don't make the swim, you don't get to bike and run.
Right.
Swim. Get
frequency of swimming. We've talked about podcasts. Frequency of swimming is important. If you don't know how to swim, it's a worthwhile investment to hire someone who can teach you. And not every swim coach can teach you. I mean, you got to do your research and get the credentials of your swim instructor or coach that's going to help you with swimming. Make sure they've had success with their approach to teaching adults how to swim, because there's a lot of techniques out there, and it's just finding the right one that's going to work for you.
Yeah. I had a private lesson right before the podcast. And she just needs to swim because she wants to do like cliff diving and scuba diving and all these sports that they have to take a little mini swim test. But after the swim lesson, she said, she was like, thank you so much. I really liked your approach to coaching because you were really good at telling me some positive things instead of just all the negative things. And I think that comes also with working with kids. As we do like the sandwich approach where, oh my God, your kick is so good right now, but your pull is awful. But keep going with that kick and let's work on the pull. the sandwich. Did you have any listener question?
I have a bunch, but I want to save them for another time.
Okay, perfect. The one other thing I wanted to do, I didn't have a question, but I did have a comment. She's a listener and I coach her. She was going to she did a race last weekend and it was in Kona and it was the Lava Man. And I guess it was super, super windy that day. And she stayed a mile from the start and she biked to the start and was almost falling off her bike. Like she was terrified. She's like, there's no way I'm going to do this. And she sent me a message. She's like, I can't do this. The wind is too much. It's too risky. And she was doing the duathlon. So it was a run first, then a bike, then a run. And I said, why don't you just go until you can't? And that's physically or mentally. And so she ended up finishing. She ended up being the only finisher. She's older, only finisher in her age group. She was so happy that she did it. And she just thanked me for saying those words, just start and keep going until you can't. And I think that's just a good thing to remember. Wendy and I talk about it with that 10-minute rule. Talk about it with running off the bike, running and training. The best triathlon training is running when you don't want to run, because I guarantee if you're doing a triathlon and you just biked hard and swam hard, you're not going to want to run, but you just run and keep going until you can't.
Yeah. And I think really DNS did not start, DNF did not finish. Which one's worse, quote unquote, depending on how you find worse. I think you got to give your chance to start. Again, assuming no illness, no injury, you're healthy, you're not putting yourself at risk for starting. You can start because you can always DNF, but don't go the DNS and DNF way. I think starting is really positive. And even if it's only like you jump in the water and you're like, nope, there's too many waves, I'm not going to do it. At least you gave yourself an opportunity and a chance.
Yes. Give yourself the best chance for success always.
Right.
What are you most excited about this week?
That's right. I haven't even thought about it.
Even though we ask each other every single time.
No, yeah. I got my taxes done.
Oh, nice.
So I'm waiting for my accountant. I just got them done last week. So I'm not excited about my taxes, but I'm excited that I'm already done with them. I'm excited we're in the month of April because I feel like my challenges, my birth month was amazing, but I'm not pressuring myself or telling myself you got to read your 53 pages of a book a day because that was the goal you set. I'm casually back in my reading and I'm kind of like, oh, I didn't do it today. I'm okay with that. So yeah, just excited to be home some weekends. I was gone every weekend of March. So I'm kind of excited to have a weekend at home.
Yes. Well, I'm excited. I'm preparing two of my big financial things. One is selling my car and buying a cheaper car. And I'm doing that hopefully on Saturday. I'm getting my car looked at. I'm testing out a cheaper car, getting it looked at. It's all happening Saturday afternoon. So in 2 days. So we'll see if I'm really nervous about it because I've never done this. I've always just gone to dealerships, traded in my old car, got a new car and drove off. I've never dealt with individual people. So it's making me really nervous, but it'll be good. And then I'm also starting to pack up because in 2 weeks we're moving into a different apartment that's cheaper. So it's a lot of April for me is a lot of big things that are really, really stressful, but it makes me excited that it'll all be done by the beginning of May. And then I can start just settling in and turning over to summer swim team season, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to the big changes and settling into those changes.
Yeah, good.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you guys have any comments, questions, anything about this episode, we'd love to hear about your DNF experiences because then it helps us help other people. Were you okay with it? How did you deal with it? So we love comments, whether you want to do it publicly on Spotify or on podcasts, or if you just want to message Wendy and I, we're really easy to get a hold of and really available and love to chit chat with you guys. Awesome. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for being here.
Make it a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Wellness Made Easy with Wendy and Kirsten.
If you want to learn more about us or anything we talked about today, check out the links in our show notes.
We would love to know what you think of our podcast and what you want more of. So drop us a comment, send us a message, and help us out by leaving us a rating and a review.
And don't forget to let us know your wellness win for this week.
Thanks for listening.
Make it a great day.